Chapter 1657. Every time they saw a familiar person die tragically, the hearts of the Phoenix guards clenched. On one hand, they were avoiding those people who were searching the palace, and on the other hand, they were looking for little Feng Yi, who might be hiding. However, after searching a few palaces, they did not see anyone. They could not help but think that there might be a secret passage somewhere in the palace. Otherwise, it was impossible for them to not be able to find anyone. However, where was this secret passage? They only knew the passage that they had used to enter the palace, but they did not know anything else. If they searched the entire palace, they might not even be able to keep their lives, let alone find little Feng Yi. On the other side, the two fairy realm powerhouses watched as the palace was engulfed in raging flames. They watched as the pillars inside the palace collapsed and fell on the two people. Only then did they turn around and leave in satisfaction to report back to their superiors. Therefore, they did not see a white figure walk out from the flames and push aside the pillar. After checking that the two of them were still breathing, the figure brought the two of them into a room in the palace and left through a secret passageway under the bed in the room. That night, not only did the imperial palace burst into flames, even the Feng Manor was destroyed. However, the people in the Feng Manor had already fled. There were not many casualties, but even if this was the case, it still caused people to sigh endlessly. In the sky, when the sky gradually brightened, the black flying ship left with the people. It was as if it had come quietly. When it left, it turned into a light arrow and disappeared into the sky. No one knew where it went. Only 4 fairy realm powerhouses and a few nascent soul cultivators were left here, waiting for the few people from the Feng family who had escaped the net. The Phoenix guards and the others searched for the entire night, but they could not find little Feng Yi's hiding place. However, the only thing that made them rejoice was that they did not find little Feng Yi and Zhao Yang's corpses among the corpses. Thus, they were certain that the two children were definitely together. They quietly left through the secret passage. Because there were some people watching the Feng Manor and the palace, they could not go back. Thus, they hid in the usual spot to discuss. When the sky brightened, the 4 fairy realm powerhouses who had stayed behind began to spread the word that if anyone dared to take in the Feng family, they would be punished with the extermination of their entire family. When these words were spoken, the various forces in the palace were in a state of panic. One was that he didn't know who these people were. The other was that the barrier that trapped the imperial palace had been broken. It was said that none of the people inside had survived. Feng Sanyuan and his wife had both died in the Sea of Fire. As for their youngest son, Feng Yi, his whereabouts were unknown. Some said that they died in the chaos. Some said that they were buried in the Sea of Fire. Some said that they were rescued. And some said that they escaped as the days passed. The people in the city worried that their families would be wiped out didn't happen. However, they knew that outside the imperial city, as well as inside the imperial city, there were people from those people watching to see if there were any survivors from the Feng family. The first to receive the news was the Yin Hall's people. They quickly reported the news of the Phoenix dynasty. On the other hand, they were secretly investigating. Just who was this group of people that suddenly appeared and destroyed the Feng clan? Chapter 1658. The Yin Palace's people secretly contacted the Phoenix Guards. On one hand, they were secretly organizing the Phoenix Imperial Palace, while on the other hand, they were waiting for Fengjiu and the others to return. And in a town a certain distance away from the imperial city, the 7- or 8-year-old Zhao Yang was holding the 3-year-old Feng Yi's hand as they walked in an alley. Both of them had changed into the clothes of an ordinary child. Moreover, the little Feng Yi was still wearing a small floral cloth skirt. His hair was tied into 2 braids, and he looked exactly like a little girl. No one would have thought that such an exquisite little girl was the little master that the Phoenix Guards couldn't find even after searching the entire imperial city. Yang, are my parents still alive? They must be alive, right? The little boy's voice was tender and soft, with an indescribable determination. In his heart, he firmly believed that his parents must still be alive. Yes, he's alive. He must be alive. Zhao Yang nodded with a serious look on his face. Yang, where are we going? Will we be caught and sold by bad people? The little boy's face was full of worry. He had never been out so far and didn't know where he was. He only knew that he had woken up and was here, with only Yang Yang by his side. "No, I will protect you," Zhao Yang said as he held his hand and walked forward. That day, he left along the secret passage. He kept walking and walking until he realized that the place he came out of was no longer the Imperial City, but a place without people outside the Imperial City. He was afraid that there would be danger in the Imperial City, so he didn't dare to go back. He could only keep walking with the little master until they came to this town. In order to fool people, he helped him change into the clothes of a little girl. He thought that since there was some distance from the Imperial City, those people wouldn't be able to find this place even if they wanted to. They would wait here, and when they heard the news of the princess' return, they would go back to take a look. "Yang Yang, I'm hungry." The little boy smelled the fragrance of the buns and didn't leave. He stared at the buns in front of him and swallowed his saliva. "There's dry food here?" He took out a piece of biscuit from the chinquin bag at his waist and gave it to him. "We can't spend money recklessly outside. Children will be caught by bad people if they spend money recklessly." Although he was only 7 or 8 years old, he had received a lot of training. He knew what two children had to pay attention to outside. What they had to do was to minimize their presence as much as possible. Hearing that he would be taken away by bad guys, little Feng Yi didn't dare to throw a tantrum. He took the dried food and followed him to the alley. He sat down and ate in small bites. Although the two of them disguised themselves well through their clothes and behavior, little Feng Yi's delicate and outstanding little face still attracted some people's attention. A tall and thin man who was eating in a small stall stared at the two children as he ate. He saw that there were no adults around them, and from their clothes, they seemed to be children from an ordinary family. However, the little girl looked so delicate, and he couldn't help but have some thoughts. If this little girl was caught and sold, just based on her delicate little face, she would probably be worth a lot of money. Thinking of this, he revealed a malicious smile. After paying, he stood up and walked towards the two children sitting in the alley. Chapter 1659. Seeing this, the tall and thin man grinned, revealing a mouthful of disgusting yellow teeth. He looked around and saw that no one was paying attention to them, so he quickly chased after them. After entering the alley, he stopped the two children. Hey, children, where are your parents?" He stood in front of the two children, revealing a weasel-like smile. Little Feng Yi looked at him while eating the dry food. He blinked his eyes and didn't speak. Zhao Yang asked, "What are you going to do?" "Follow me, and I'll take you to eat delicious food. How about it?" The tall and thin man grinned and approached the two children. He thought that it would be better to knock them out and carry them away. "No, you're a bad guy. Go away," little Feng Yi said and threw the dry food in his hand at him. "Hey, that's not up to you." The tall and thin man sneered and went forward to pick up little Feng Yi. Unexpectedly, the little brat actually ran behind the older child and hid behind him. Seeing this, he smiled maliciously. "You can't run away. Follow me obediently, and you won't suffer." However, as soon as he finished speaking, he saw the 7 or 8-year-old boy take out a dagger from nowhere and hold it in his hand. The cold and defensive eyes, as well as the murderous aura and spiritual aura that permeated from his body, stunned him. He couldn't help but take a step back. He was a little stunned and surprised. "You're a cultivator?" Originally, he saw that the two children didn't have any spiritual aura, so he thought that they should be children from ordinary families. Unexpectedly, the aura that this 7 or 8-year-old boy emitted was spiritual aura, which made him feel shocked and hesitant. Such a young child had already begun to cultivate. He was definitely not a child from an ordinary family. Moreover, children from ordinary families rarely became cultivators. Although he couldn't cultivate, he could still distinguish between Xian Qi and spiritual aura. This child's aura was clearly spiritual aura. Looking at the murderous aura that burst out from his body, and the cold eyes that were like those of a small beast staring at him, he couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart, and all the hair on his body stood up. Don't be agitated. I'm just teasing you." And then, before he could finish his words, he saw the figure in front of him leap forward. His pupils shrank as he felt the pain of a sharp blade cutting across his throat. He instinctively reached out to block it, trying to suppress the little ghost. Little Feng Yi stood to the side and watched as Yang Yang pounced on the man. However, her dagger failed to take his life. Instead, the bad guy grabbed her hand. Just as he was getting anxious, he saw Yang Yang hugging the bad guy's leg and pushing him to the ground. She pounced on him and stabbed the bad guy's throat with her dagger. Ah! A miserable shriek rang out. In an instant, crimson blood gushed out like a fountain, dyeing the ground red. That person twitched on the ground until he died, motionless. Zhao Yang's hand trembled slightly as he held the dagger. His face was a little pale, but he bit his lips and forced himself to calm down. Looking at the motionless person, he was worried and stepped forward to check his breath. After confirming that he was dead, he quickly put away the dagger and left quickly with the stunned little Feng Yi in his arms. Chapter 1660. However, he couldn't show it. He couldn't be afraid because he had to protect his master, who was younger than him, until he found the princess. Little Feng Yi recovered from his daze. He could feel Yang Yang's body trembling as she hugged him. He couldn't help but reach out his hand and pat Zhao Yang's head gently like how his father and mother used to comfort others. His soft voice softly rang out. Yang Yang, don't be afraid. It's all right. Yi is with you. Hearing this, Zhao Yang's heart warmed and he gradually calmed down. I'm not afraid. He couldn't be afraid. If he was afraid, what would happen to his little master? He was younger than him. He was a soft little baby. He had to protect him. He had promised many people to protect him. On the other side, Feng Jiao and the rest were originally heading towards the Xianyuan dynasty. However, after hearing the news of the Phoenix dynasty, they quickly turned back. Xianyuan Mo's, who originally wanted to go back with them, could only return to the palace after receiving an urgent letter from his father. After about 10 days of flying, Feng Jiao and the rest finally entered the territory of the Phoenix dynasty. On the flying ship, the atmosphere was heavy. Feng Zhao's face was full of self-blame. If I didn't leave with the Fire Phoenix to find you, perhaps father and the rest wouldn't be in trouble. It's all my fault. It's all my fault that along the way, he had been blaming himself. He felt that it was because he left with the Fire Phoenix that his father and the rest fell into a desperate situation. If the Fire Phoenix was there, no matter how bad the situation was, she would at least be able to protect them. But now, his father died tragically. More than half of the Feng family's Phoenix guards were killed. One by one, they died in the palace and were buried in the sea of fire. As for them, they didn't even know who the murderer was. He didn't deserve to be his son. Father, don't blame yourself. If you want to blame someone, then blame me. It must be because of me that grandfather and the rest were buried in the sea of fire. I'm the one who caused all this. It's just that grandfather and the rest are no longer here. But little Feng Yi is still alive. We have to find little Feng Yi first. Feng Jiao also felt terrible. She felt that these people might be her enemies. She was the one who implicated her family. When she thought of the grandfather who doted on her being buried in the sea of fire, her heart clenched into a ball. She was in so much pain that she couldn't breathe. Her grandfather's voice, when he called her in the past, seemed to echo in her ears. On the street, he sat in front of a wine shop, holding a wine gourd and asking for wine. He even complained that the wine was not good. At that time, her face was disfigured and covered with a veil, but he could recognize her at a glance. It was that call of little Feng that melted and warmed her cold and indifferent heart. Clearly, she was just a latecomer. Clearly, she had nothing to do with them. However, when they called her Phone Girl, protected her time and time again, and showed her selfless love and trust, she gradually integrated into the Feng family and treated them as family. She wanted to give them the best. She wanted them to be happy. But now, because of her, they were buried in the sea of fire. Every time she thought of this, it was as if someone was using a knife to cut her heart. Who was it? Who wanted to exterminate her family? Who wanted to kill her family? Chapter 1661. Don't blame yourselves, father and daughter. The most important thing right now is to hurry back. Only when you get home will you know what to do and how to do it. Now, no matter how much you blame yourselves, it's useless. Shangguan Wanrong said softly, glancing at them. When we get back, the most important thing is to find the child. No news now is also good news, so you don't have to worry too much. Both of them were silent and didn't speak. Seeing this, Lung Hua and the others on the airship couldn't help but worry. Apart from consuming spirit stones, flying for a long time was also unbearable. Therefore, when they saw that the sky was getting dark and that they were in the territory of the Phoenix Dynasty, they stopped outside of town and went into the city to find an inn to rest for the night. They planned to continue tomorrow. Calculating the distance from here, with the flying ship speed, they should be able to reach the Imperial City in 2 or 3 days. The closer they were, the more anxious they were to return, and the more they didn't want to go back and see all those sorrowful things. After dinner, everyone sat for a while and chatted for a while, then returned to their rooms to rest. However, in the middle of the night, everyone suddenly heard movement on the roof. They weren't in a deep sleep, so when they heard the commotion, they all jumped up from the window and leaped to the roof. Fungio saw a black-clothed man skimming on the roof. After discovering her, he shot several arrows at her and then quickly fled. Seeing this, she shouted to Du Fan and the others behind her, "Protect my father and mother." As soon as she finished speaking, she had already jumped several meters away. Guan Shilin, who jumped out from behind, saw this and said to them, "I'll go and take a look." He was a bit worried about her chasing after him alone. Du Fan and the others looked at each other, then went down to the inn and joined Feng Xiao and the others. Master and young Master Guan went out to chase after the person. "Master and Madam, please wait in the room." "Did you see who it was?" Feng Xiao asked in a low voice. "How strong is that person?" With just the two of them chasing after the person, if the enemy was too strong, he was afraid that there's only one person, so there shouldn't be a problem. Du Fan said, looking at the fire phoenix standing on Shangguan Wanrong's shoulder in her bird form. She knew that her master was worried, so she left Fire Phoenix behind to protect them. However, just as they finished speaking, they suddenly saw a long sword coming from outside. Feng Xiao immediately drew his long sword to block and attacked the person outside the window. The two figures fought in the night. After a few moves, the man in black looked deeply at Feng Xiao. A dark light flashed in his eyes, and he immediately turned and fled. "All of you stand guard. Protect Madam," Feng Xiao shouted and chased after the man. He thought that this must have something to do with the enemy who killed his father. Perhaps they were sent by those people. As long as they caught one, they would be able to find out who the mastermind was. Therefore, no matter what, they couldn't let him escape. Because he only wanted to catch the person, he didn't notice the light that flashed in that person's eyes and chased after him. However, after he chased for several hundred meters, he saw that person standing in an empty alley, waiting for him. Seeing this, he stared at him vigilantly. He noticed that this person was a strong man in the intermediate stage of the fairy realm. At this moment, he was even more certain that this person must have something to do with the enemy who killed his father. Chapter 1662. "Ah, Feng Xiao, you're the monarch of the Phoenix Dynasty. I didn't expect you to be such a muddle-headed person. With a person like you as the monarch, the Phoenix Dynasty will be annexed and destroyed by other countries sooner or later." That person sneered and looked at him as if he was mocking and ridiculing him. There was even a hint of playfulness in his expression, as if he had found something fun. "What happens to my country has nothing to do with you. Today, I must catch you. Find out the person behind the scenes who attacked our Feng family." His voice was cold and sharp. With a pair of tiger-like eyes, he released his dark force aura and stabbed the long sword into the ground. He grabbed the air with both hands, and the surging dark force aura condensed the airflow in the air into his hands. The whistling airflow wrapped around his fists, and with a thought, he suddenly punched out with both fists. "Eat my fist!" "Ha!" With a low roar, he punched out with both fists. The two fists seemed to contain the power of 1,000 pounds. As the fists were punched out, the airflow around the fists formed two huge fists that suddenly collided with each other. That person didn't expect him to attack as soon as he said he would. Moreover, his aura was so ferocious. Both of his fists were like a ferocious tiger descending from the mountain as they pounced towards him. Before they collided, The powerful aura and pressure of the martial god had already forced him to take a few steps back. He lost his balance and almost fell to the ground. He steadied himself at the last moment, and after stabilizing his body, he quickly condensed a stream of spiritual energy and attacked forward. The two streams of spiritual energy collided with a bang and bounced off. Because of this, the two of them retreated a few meters away, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corners of their mouths. Feng Xiao didn't pay attention to the fluctuation of qi and blood in his body. When he saw that the black-clothed man was also injured, he wanted to take advantage of the situation to chase after him. The airflow in his body surged, and his dark force aura burst out, increasing his speed again. The next moment, he flew out, and his fist, which contained killing intent, swung toward the black-clothed man on the other side. Feng Jiao and Guan Shilin chased after the black-robed man. Originally, there was only one black-robed man, but after he reached the outskirts of the city, several black-robed men emerged from the shadows. These black-robed men's abilities were all at the level of Fairy Realm. Looking at the 7 or 8 Fairy Realm experts, Guan Shilin's heart tightened. Sure enough, his instincts were right. He had felt somewhat uneasy just now, and he had sensed danger, which was why he had followed them here. It was fortunate that he had followed them here. Otherwise, how could Xiao Jiao deal with 7 or 8 Fairy Realm experts by himself? However, who sent these people? She actually tried so hard to take her life? An ordinary faction would not have so many Fairy Realm experts. Moreover, how did they know that they were staying here? It was as if their every move and action had been seen by these people in the dark. Such terrifying certainty and control made him feel inexplicably uneasy. It was as if this was the most unfathomable faction they had encountered in a long time. Moreover, until now they still didn't know who these people were. Did Xiao Jiao provoke such a strong and powerful faction? As far as he knew, she didn't. Then, why did these people target her again and again? Chapter 1663. It was important to note that any one of these powerhouses, be it in the Phoenix Dynasty, other countries, or any of the forces of the 8 great empires, was already a powerhouse who could dominate an entire region. However, there were so many powerhouses here just to kill Feng Jiao. Feng Jiao's gaze swept past each of these people. So many powerhouses of the fairy realm. Where did they come from? When did she provoke such a person? Attack! One of the cultivators at the peak of the fairy realm shouted. As soon as he gave the order, several other people instantly attacked the two of them. Seeing this, Guan Shilin immediately took out his large knife and slashed forward, while Feng Jiao also took out her Qingfeng sword to meet the enemy. In an instant, the airflow in the air solidified due to their fighting spirit. A strong pressure and sharp airflow flowed in the air. The airflow was as sharp as knives and swords, slicing through their bodies and leaving holes in their clothes. The sound of swords clashing rang out, and the smell of blood also spread in the air. Although Guan Shilin's body was not seriously injured, the back of his hand and face were cut by the airflow. Fresh blood seeped out, and it was a horrifying sight. Several powerhouses of the fairy realm joined forces, and the main attacker was Feng Jiao. Even though her strength was outstanding and her combat ability was shocking, she could not fight against so many of them. Whoosh! A sharp airflow slashed past, and Feng Jiao gasped. Looking at the wound on her arm caused by the opponent's sword, she gritted her teeth and glanced coldly at the attacker. And another sword slashed at her calf, causing her to stagger. Due to the injury on her calf, she fell forward and blocked an attack from one of them, but she could not block the attacks from all around her. These people could have attacked her fatal spots, but they only cut her limbs and did not directly take her life. This made her feel that something was not right. Xiao Jiao, when he saw Feng Jiao being besieged by a group of people, he felt his heart ache. Feng Jiao was heavily outnumbered, and her body was covered in wounds. Fresh blood seeped out of her red clothes and dripped onto the ground. This was especially the case when he saw a fairy realm expert holding a sword and thrusting it toward her shoulder. Yes, the sharp sword pierced through from his shoulder to his back. The blood dripping from the sword made one's heart tremble. Brother! Feng Jiao's heart clenched. Seeing him block that sword for her, she felt resentful and helpless at the same time. She had always thought that she was very strong, but when she was surrounded and attacked by so many experts, she realized that no matter how strong she was still outnumbered. At this moment, she was indignant and furious. She was outnumbered, and her strength was not strong enough to protect everything. She had known this for a long time. However, increasing one's strength was not something that could be done in just 2 or 3 days. Even if she wanted to increase her strength, her foundation was not stable, and the opportunity was not right. Even if she had the pills as a foundation, she would not be able to increase her strength and cultivation in an extremely short period of time. At the same time, on the other side, Feng Xiao and the black-clothed man had fought a few more rounds. The two of them were actually evenly matched, and after a round of fighting, both of them had suffered internal injuries. Pooh! The black-clothed man spat out a mouthful of blood. Feeling the fluctuation of the aura in his body and the taste of blood in his mouth, he could not help but laugh coldly. He raised his hand and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Seeing that Feng Xiao still wanted to fight, he revealed a strange smile. Chapter 1664. Hearing this, Feng Xiao furrowed his brows and shouted, "What nonsense are you spouting?" "Nonsense? That's why I said you're muddle-headed. You can't even tell if the person beside you is your daughter." That person chuckled and glanced at him with a sinister gaze. "That's right. It seems like this isn't the first time you can't recognize your daughter." Hearing this, Feng Xiao's heart skipped a beat. How did this person know so much about their matters? He couldn't recognize his daughter? Was he referring to the matter with Su Ruoyan a few years ago? And now he said he couldn't recognize his daughter? Could it be that the daughter beside him was also a fake? Impossible. This was simply impossible. Don't make irresponsible remarks. This is simply impossible. How could I not recognize my own daughter? He shouted sternly, his heart filled with anger. Back then, he couldn't recognize his own daughter and let her wander outside and suffer so much. He couldn't make this kind of mistake again. Irresponsible remarks? Ha ha! That person raised his head and laughed loudly. His laughter suddenly stopped, and he said, "Our people have already investigated. Before we decided to deal with your Feng family, we investigated every single one of you from childhood to adulthood. However, what we found very interesting is that your Feng family was at most a general's estate in the past. Being able to seize the Murong family's empire and establish the Phoenix dynasty was truly all thanks to one person." That person stared at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. I don't need to say who this person is. I think King Feng should be very clear about it, right? That's right, it's your precious daughter, Fengjiu. But according to what I know, your daughter's original name isn't Fengjiu, but Fengqinga? My daughter likes to be called Fengjiu. So what? Could it be that just based on a name, you can say that she's not my daughter? Ridiculous. Feng Xiao snorted in a deep voice. She's my daughter, so she's my daughter. No matter what my daughter does, I won't doubt it. Don't even think about trying to drive a wedge between us and distract us. As soon as his voice fell, he held the sword in his hand. His anger and profound energy aura intertwined as he attacked the person in front of him. If you have the time to spout nonsense, then take another strike from me. The imposing and swift sword that contained a powerful, profound energy aura struck out. The sword let out a rumbling sound, and the profound energy transformed into a swift and fierce airflow that directly attacked the black-robed man in front of him. His killing intent overflowed, and his battle intent was biting cold. With every step he took, the ground seemed to tremble slightly. Seeing this, the man in black quickly retreated. Feng Xiao, you're a father in vain. You don't even know that your own daughter has been possessed by someone else. You even treat the old monster who has possessed your daughter's body as your daughter. It's really funny, ha ha. S. Possession? Feng Xiao was stunned and stopped the attack in his hand. He stood there stiffly and looked at the black-clothed man in shock. You said possession? How is this possible? Seeing him freeze and stop, the black-clothed man's eyes flashed with a dark light and said, "How is it not possible? I've said it before. Our people have already investigated. Your daughter was possessed by your current daughter when that Su Ruyan schemed against her, disfigured her, and sold her to a brothel. Chapter 1665. Impossible! Feng Xiao shouted agitatedly and pointed his sword at him in anger. You're spouting nonsense. No, I'm not spouting nonsense. I'm just stating the facts that you've overlooked. That person sneered. After your daughter returned home from a dangerous situation, didn't her personality change completely? Your daughter has lived for 15 or 16 years. Even if she's beautiful, her cultivation has always been mediocre. She doesn't know how to refine pills and make medicine. She hasn't even met an ordinary sacred beast. So how could she have met an ancient divine beast as soon as she went out? You want to say that it was her luck? Then why didn't she have such luck in the past? Is an ancient divine beast something that anyone can meet just because they want to? Is alchemy something that anyone can learn just because they want to? Who is her master? Where did she learn all her skills from? Don't you think all of this is strange? If an old monster hadn't taken over her body, then how could she have learned so many things in one night? If she hadn't been taken over, then how could her temperament have changed so much? She did all those things that others couldn't do. This isn't something that a teenage girl can do. If she hadn't been taken over, then how can these things be explained? It's really a waste that you're Feng Qing's father. I reckon that your daughter won't be able to rest in peace until she dies. Her own family killed her and took over her body and doted on that old monster as their own daughter. Tell me, how can your daughter rest in peace? Stop talking. Shut up. Feng Zhao's eyes were red as he angrily shouted. His body was trembling and his heart was filled with fear. He couldn't believe that all of this was true. However, every word that person said was like a thunderclap that exploded in his heart. It made him feel fear, and he couldn't accept it. If all of this was true, his blood and chi clashed, and his mind was shaken. Under this powerful impact, he lost his guard, and a mouthful of blood gushed out from his throat. With a puff, he spat out a mouthful of blood and staggered back. He only felt the world spinning around him, and he couldn't even stand steadily and fell to the ground. This matter is very interesting, isn't it? After our investigation and analysis, we also feel that this matter is very interesting. That person walked closer step by step and said, Do you think we don't know what Yin Dian and the Phoenix Guards did? No, we already knew that they killed our people and tried to infiltrate us on behalf of those people. It's just that our Lord was too lazy to bother with them. You guys are just ants that he has nothing better to do. Not to mention exterminating those people in your palace. Even exterminating your entire Phoenix dynasty is just a matter of a word to us. However, my master has changed his mind and plans to let you guys go. At this point, the black-clothed man revealed a strange smile. Do you know why I let you go? Because my lord is the same as me. He also thinks that this matter is very interesting. Feng Xiao sat on the ground in a daze, as if he couldn't hear his words. His head felt like it was going to explode. His mind was replaying the things that the man had said that they had neglected. Chapter 1666. Not only was your daughter killed by her possession, but your father and the others were also implicated by her. She's a scourge. How could you treat an old monster who killed your daughter and father as your daughter? Haha, your Feng family will be destroyed even without us doing anything. The black-robed man stopped in front of Feng Xiao as he spoke. He looked at him, who was sitting on the ground and trembling. He smiled coldly and squatted down, whispering into Feng Xiao's ear, treating an old monster who destroyed your family as your daughter, and doting on your enemy as much as you can. You're a failure as a son and a failure as a father. Under the collision of qi and blood, Feng Xiao spat out another mouthful of blood. He only felt his vision turn black, and he fainted. Until the moment before he fainted, that sentence still echoed in his mind. In vain as a son, in vain as a father, that on the other side, the cultivators of the fairy realm who were attacking Fengjiu and Guan Shilin heard a signal. Their leaders shouted for them to retreat, and they quickly left. Just like how they came, there was no trace of them, and no one knew where they went. Guan Shilin spat out a mouthful of blood, and he couldn't help but kneel down. The wounds on his body were shocking, but when he opened his mouth, the first thing he asked was, "Xiao Jiu, how are you?" Feng Jiu's calf was also cut, and he was limping. She went forward to support him and took out a pill for him to consume. "I'm fine. They're all minor injuries." "Those people left. Why didn't they kill you?" Guan Shilin asked, puzzled. They clearly had the chance to kill them. After all, so many strong cultivators of the fairy realm joined forces. It was too easy for them to kill the two of them. Feng Jiu shook his head. "I'm not sure. These people didn't plan to kill us from the beginning." She couldn't understand this either. Why didn't they kill her when they had such a good opportunity? "Let's go back first. Fortunately, they didn't kill us. Otherwise, we would have died here today." Guan Shilin helped her up and asked, "Xiao Jiu, how's the wound on your calf? You didn't injure yourself, did you?" "Yeah, I didn't hurt any bones or tendons," Feng Jiu said as he tossed out the flying feather and jumped onto it with Guan Shilin. The two sat on the flying feather and headed towards the inn. At the inn, the fire phoenix was also waiting anxiously. If it wasn't for its master's orders not to leave, it would have already flown out to look for her. Life-bonded beasts naturally had a telepathic connection, and it could faintly feel that its master wasn't doing too well. "They've been out for so long. Why haven't they returned yet?" Shengwan Wanrong said worriedly, walking back and forth in the room. She came to the window and looked down, saying, "How about we go out and look for him? Let's wait a little longer. Maybe they've already returned." Du Fan said, looking at Shengwan Wanrong, "Master and Master are most worried about Madam." "Madam, don't worry. Let's wait and see. After half an hour, if they haven't returned, we'll go and look for them." "I'll wait outside," Lung Hua said as he walked out, intending to wait for them outside the inn. If he waited outside, he would be able to see them from afar. Be careful. Chapter 1667. Hearing the sound, everyone looked out of the window and saw Feng Jiu and Guan Shilin sitting on flying feather coming towards them. However, when they heard that they had returned and saw that the blood and wounds on their bodies had disappeared without a trace, they all gasped and their hearts were in their mouths. Du Fan, Lung Hua, and Lung Shuang quickly rushed over to support them and brought them back to the room to help them sit down. "Master, how did you get hurt so badly?" Clearly, there was only one person chasing after them. Could it be that there was an ambush? Feng Jiu didn't answer. Instead, after looking around at everyone, she didn't see her father's figure. Her heart sank, and she asked, "Where's my father?" Later, the men in black attacked again. Master chased after them and hasn't come back yet. Du Fan said. As soon as he finished speaking, he felt that something was wrong. Even his master and Guan Shilin were injured like this. Then, would Feng Xiao also encounter an ambush when he went out? Immediately, he said, "I'll go look for him immediately." "Fire Phoenix, you go with me," Feng Jiu said and asked Fire Phoenix to go with her. She was worried that her father would encounter an ambush. If that was the case, the consequences would be unimaginable. "Your injuries." Fire Phoenix hesitated. In its opinion, no one's safety was more important than her. Now that she was injured like this, could it leave to look for her father? "I'm fine. It's just a flesh wound." She spoke slowly, but the pain from her wound caused her face to turn paler, and sweat appeared on her forehead. "Fire Phoenix, go quickly. I'll take care of him here. Nothing will happen," Shengwan Wanrong said. She was also worried that Feng Xiao would encounter an ambush. If she had known, she would have asked him not to chase after them. "Fire Phoenix, go quickly. Godfather's safety is more important," Guan Shilin urged. "All right, I'll go look for it. You guys must be careful," Fire Phoenix said, and then went out with Du Fan. "Xiao Jiu, let's apply some medicine and bandage your wound." Shengwan Wanrong and Lung Hua helped Guan Shilin up and walked towards the inner room, while telling Lung Hua to help Guan Shilin apply medicine and treat Guan Shilin's wounds. After the wounds on their bodies were treated, they changed into new clothes. However, after such a long time, they still hadn't seen them come back. Feng Jiu and Shengwan Wanrong felt increasingly uneasy. "Lung Shuang, Lung Hua, you two go out and help look," Feng Jiu signaled. "Yes." The two of them replied, then turned around and walked out. There were only 3 people left sitting in the room. Shangguan Wanrong looked at the two injured people and asked, "Who did this? Do you know?" Feng Jiao shook his head. "I don't know. I only know that the people who were sent here were all strong men of the fairy realm. Their strength can't be underestimated. I'm afraid that it's not an ordinary force. What's strange is that they clearly had the chance to kill us, but they didn't." Hearing this, Shangguan Wanrong was also puzzled. "Why is that? Do they have other motives?" "I don't know," Feng Jiao said, looking outside. "I just hope that father is fine." Chapter 1668. He's all right. His injuries are only superficial, and his internal injuries aren't serious, she said slowly. Then, she supported herself against the table and sat down. She could finally relax. Her grandfather and the others were gone, and she already blamed herself for this. She didn't dare to imagine that if her father had been killed because of her, then his injuries aren't serious? Then why is he unconscious? Guan Shilin asked, a little worried. Shangguan Wanrong also checked Feng Zhao's pulse and retracted her hand. Just as Xiao Jio said, his injuries are all superficial, and his internal injuries aren't serious. He fainted because his blood and qi were flowing in the opposite direction. He must have suffered a great shock, which caused him to lose consciousness. He should be able to wake up after resting and taking some medicine to calm his nerves. That's right. Feng Jiao nodded. She was sure that her father's body didn't have any fatal injuries. This made her feel relieved, but at the same time, she felt a little uneasy. What were those people trying to do? Why did they attack them but not take their lives? In the past, she always knew who her opponents were, but this time, she didn't even know who her enemies were. She didn't know when they had made enemies, but on the contrary, the other party knew their whereabouts like the back of their hand. This made her feel a little uneasy. She had a feeling that something unexpected was going to happen. "It's good that he's fine," Guan Shilin said, then said to Du Fan and Lung Hua, "Help him in and bandage his wounds first." "Okay," the two answered, and carried the unconscious Feng Xiao in. At this time, Feng Jiao looked at the fire phoenix and asked, "Where did you find my father? Was there anyone else around at the time?" "It was in a small alley. When we found him, he was already unconscious. He was the only one around. But looking at the traces in that area, he should have fought with a strong fighter of the fairy realm," the fire phoenix said, flapping its wings and landing on the table. Feng Jiao pursed her lips, deep in thought. It was like this again. They only injured him, but didn't kill him? What were those people trying to do? At the same time, in a dense forest outside the city, on a spaceship, the strong fighters of the fairy realm who attacked Feng Jiao and the others were reporting the battle situation to their master. "We did as our master said. We only injured them, but didn't take their lives. After receiving the signal, we came back directly." The 7 or 8 people who were attacking Feng Jiao and Guan Shilin said to the people on the boat. "Another fighter of the fairy realm." Feng Xiao couldn't take it and vomited blood and fainted. "I believe that there will be a good show when he's awake." Feng Xiao couldn't take it. He vomited blood. T's heat ant. Feng's teat. Tess. This Feng Jiao is quite a character. But I wonder where this person's soul came from. He's got all kinds of skills. He's really a genius. Even if I wanted to kill him, I couldn't bear to. The voice wasn't real, and it was changing. It was as if it wasn't his original voice. It was impossible to tell whether the person was male or female, old or young. They only knew that the voice contained a powerful pressure that made people's hearts tremble. Even the strong fighters of the fairy realm, who were outside, couldn't help but lower their heads respectfully when they heard his voice. What do you think? What will Feng Xiao do to Feng Jiao next? Was he going to pretend that nothing had happened? Or will he kill the shade who took over his daughter's body and ruined his family? Chapter 1669. When the cultivators of the fairy realm heard this, they looked at each other but didn't speak, because they couldn't be sure. The people of the Feng family couldn't be guessed with a normal person's mentality. Master's plan to sow discord might work on others, but it was hard to say whether it would work on the people of the Feng family. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so interested in this. They were interested because things were unknown. Even they couldn't know how things would develop until the end. Seeing that no one spoke, the person inside asked, "What's wrong? You can't say? Is this question difficult to answer?" Everyone hesitated. In the end, one of them replied, "Master, this subordinate really can't guess the thoughts of the people of the Feng family. If it was an ordinary person, I believe that after learning about this matter, they would definitely be at odds. However, I don't know what Feng Xiao will do. However, this subordinate thinks that we should know soon. As long as they waited for Feng Xiao to wake up, they would naturally know how he would deal with this matter." That person sneered, "I don't have so much time to stay here. Dealing with the Feng family is just a matter of convenience. What we really want to deal with is not these insignificant ants." After saying that, without waiting for those people to speak, the voice sounded again. "However, I'm very interested in what will happen to their family. How about this? Leave one person to watch over them and see how they deal with this matter." "Yes," everyone responded. One of them hesitated, stepped forward, and asked, "Master, after the result is out, will the Feng family still be destroyed? How will this Fengjiu be dealt with? This woman is extraordinary. This subordinate is worried that if she is allowed to grow, she will definitely become a big problem in the future." "Definitely become a big problem? You really think highly of her. She's just a woman. Even if she's an old monster who stole someone else's body, what can she do? Can she overturn the heavens with her own strength?" That person said disapprovingly, "Let the Feng family do as they please. No matter what, it's just a small dynasty. It can't become a big deal. As for that Fengjiu, I'm curious about her future path. Let's wait and see. What I'm interested in now is how Feng Xiao will treat Fengjiu after he wakes up. Put everything else aside." Knowing their master's temper, they didn't dare to say anything and could only respectfully retreat to the side. When the sky was about to brighten, the airship left, leaving only one person to watch over the future. As the first ray of sunlight shone on the earth and dawn came, the people on the street gradually became lively. The hawkers' voices mixed with the various voices on the street, forming a lively and bustling scene. Ordinary people, they didn't know what happened last night and the danger. This was the advantage of being ordinary. Nothing would involve them. Battles and experts had nothing to do with them. In the end, Feng Xiao, who had been unconscious for an entire night, slowly woke up. He slowly opened his eyes and looked at the top of the bed. He lay there motionlessly, as if he had had a very, very long dream. Chapter 1670. "You're awake?" Shangguan Wanrong, who had been keeping watch at the bedside, saw that he had woken up. She let out a sigh of relief and revealed a gentle smile. Feng Xiao looked at her, composed himself, and asked, "How did I come back? Last night when Xiao Jio and the others came back, you still hadn't come back, so we sent Du Fan and the others out to look for you. It was almost dawn when they found you in the alley. At that time, when we saw you unconscious and being carried back, our hearts were in turmoil and we were very worried. Fortunately, there were no serious injuries." As Shangguan Wanrong spoke, she helped him pull up the quilt. "You don't know how worried I was last night. Not only were you injured and unconscious, even Xiao Jio and Shi Lin were injured all over." Hearing this, Feng Zhao's heart shook, instinctively and anxiously asked, "They were injured? Were their injuries serious?" "Ah." Xiao Jio and Shi Lin said they were fine, that it was just a flesh wound, but I saw that the injuries were not light. Shi Lin's shoulder was stabbed by a sword, and there were many big and small wounds on his body. Some of them were so deep that you could see the bone. And Xiao Jio's hands and calves were cut. Last night when he came back, he was limping. I was worried that you might have encountered danger outside." As Shangguan Wanrong spoke, she sighed softly. "This child really cares about us. Even if she knows it's dangerous, she still leaves Huafeng, who can protect her, by our side. When she heard that you haven't returned, she sent everyone out to look for you." Feng Xiao listened in silence. His heart was also very uncomfortable. At this time, there was a knock on the door from outside. "Mother, is father awake?" Feng Zhao's voice came from outside. Shangguan Wanrong in the room revealed a gentle smile and said to Feng Xiao, "You see, your daughter has come to see you. She must be worried about you." As she spoke, she got up and went to open the door. Feng Xiao, who was lying on the bed, had a complicated look in his eyes. His heart seemed to be struggling. At this moment, it seemed like he did not know how to face his daughter. "Father, you're awake?" Feng Xiao limped in. Although the wound on her calf had been treated, it had not healed. After all, although the green lotus in her body could heal her injuries quickly, it would attract attention. She could only use medicine to bandage it and let it slowly heal. Feng Xiao, who was lying on the bed, looked at his daughter, limping, supported by his wife, and Lung Shuang followed behind her, who was carrying medicine. Looking at her face's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful face, he could not help but ask, "Are you hurt badly? Are you hurt?" After he finished asking the question, he tests. "Been together for so many years. Funzes some habit. I'm fine. I'll be fine after a few days." She walked forward with a smile and sat down on the bed. Together with her mother, she helped her father up from the bed. He leaned against the headboard and then took the bowl of medicine from Lung Shuang's hands. "This is the calming soup I asked Lung Shuang to make." Father's mind was greatly affected, so his qi and blood went against the flow and fainted. "Drink this medicine and you'll be fine." She scooped up a spoonful and blew on it, then brought it to his mouth and said with a smile, "Come, it's not bitter." Feng Xiao looked at her, quietly looking at her. It seemed like he was looking at her, but it also seemed like he was looking at another person through her. His mind was replaying scenes from the past. Chapter 1671. She followed behind him to practice martial arts. She was small, but she was never afraid of hardships. When she was bullied and called a motherless child, she ran back and asked him where her mother was. She gradually grew up and became a young lady. She secretly told him that she liked Murong Yixian and that she wanted to marry him in the future and be his bride. Then, those scenes appeared in his mind as if they had happened yesterday. They were so clear, so deep, and so touched his heart. His daughter, his Qinggu, was killed by Su Riyun's trick of timing, right? The daughter who returned was strong and independent, confident and flamboyant. Sometimes she was cold and proud. Sometimes she was mischievous. Sometimes she was cute and charming. And sometimes she was wise and steady. These were all things that the Qinggu of the past did not have. It was not that they did not notice the change in her after she returned. It was just that they did not suspect her because she was his daughter. It was not only because of her appearance. Even the feeling was similar. The blood ties between family members caused them to never doubt it, and they would never doubt it. But suddenly, one day, someone told him that his daughter had died, and the current daughter was no longer his daughter. Who could understand this kind of feeling? However, Xiao Jiu was not Su Ruiyun. Su Riyun disguised herself as his daughter in order to gain benefits from the Feng family, in order to obtain everything from them, in order to use them. Su Riyun had never treated them as her real family. But Xiao Jiu was not. Wasn't he very clear about this? In these few years, he saw clearly how she treated his family members. He also felt it very clearly. She treated them as her biological parents and her biological grandfather. She treated them as her family. She protected them. When the Feng family was in danger, it was she who stepped forward to protect the Feng family. It was she who supported everything with her own strength. It was she who blocked the danger for them. It was she who established the Phoenix dynasty for them. Even now, he and his wife could be reunited because of her. It was because she traveled thousands of miles from the Phoenix dynasty to the 8 great empires alone. It was she who braved danger and saved Wanrong from the 3 Yangtze. What right did he have to blame her? What right did he have to say that she was not his daughter? What right did he have to deny everything she had done for her family in the past? Could it be that just because of a few words from that black-clothed man, he could overturn everything and refuse to acknowledge this daughter? No. Even if her soul was no longer his daughter, she was still the second daughter given to the Feng family by the heavens. The heavens must have known that his daughter was gone, so they sent Xiao Jiu to their side. They let her replace Qinggu and fulfill her filial piety. They let her replace their daughter and become their daughter. Feng Jiu and Shengwan Wanrong looked at each other, somewhat worried, because Feng Xiao sat there in a daze, watching Feng Jiu silently shed tears. That kind of sadness made their hearts heavy. "Father?" What's wrong with you? Are you feeling unwell? Fengjiu asked softly. Her eyes and voice could not hide her worry. Husband, what happened to you? Chapter 1672. Feng Xiao slowly regained his senses. Through his tears, he looked at his daughter in front of him and suddenly reached out to hug her. Choking with sobs, he said, Xiao Jiao, I'm sorry. It's Daddy's fault. I'm sorry, Chinga, I'm sorry. Daughter, I'm sorry, that he muttered and repeated the words over and over again. He was apologizing to Fengjiu because he shouldn't have wavered in that moment. He shouldn't have doubted her. She did so much for them and gave so much of her heart. Yet he actually doubted her for a moment and even felt his heart waver. He apologized to her and also apologized to his daughter, Song Chinga. Only now did he know that his daughter was long gone. He let her leave alone, and as a father, he didn't protect her well. That's why she died at such a young age. As a father, he didn't fulfill his responsibility and didn't protect her well. It was all his fault. All his fault. Fengjiu was slightly startled. He was a little confused and worried. What happened to Daddy? He said that men bleed but don't cry. A man like him would never cry so easily. Why was he crying so sadly and blaming himself? What the hell happened? Daddy, did something happen? Tell me, I'll think of a way, she said softly as she gently patted his back. Beside him, Shengwan Wanrong was also startled. Seeing Feng Xiao crying so sadly and blaming himself, her eyes couldn't help but turn red. Her heart was anxious. Did something happen? Otherwise, why would he be like this? After a long while, Feng Xiao finally calmed down. His heart gradually calmed down. He wiped away his tears and shook his head. I lost my composure. It's fine, you don't need to worry. He decided that he wouldn't tell anyone about this. That's it. It was fine as long as he was sad about Chinga's passing. Wanrong shouldn't let her know. Seeing that he didn't say anything, Fengjiu didn't pursue the matter. He only said, Daddy, the medicine is getting cold. Drink it first. Okay. He adjusted his mind and buried the matter deep in his heart. He looked deeply at her, took the bowl of medicine from her hand, and drank the calming soup in one gulp. Fengjiu sensed that her daddy's gaze was a little strange. It seemed to be complicated, but also seemed to be a little emotional. In the end, he seemed to be relieved, which made her feel a little strange. What exactly happened to her father last night? Why was he so strange after waking up? Daddy, why are you looking at me like that? Do you have something to say to me? She couldn't help but ask. Feng Xiao looked at her, nodded, and handed the bowl to Shengwan Wanrong. Then he said to Fengjiu, Xiao Jiao, you must always remember that you are Daddy's daughter. You are a member of the Feng family. No matter what happens, you are a member of the Feng family. You are Daddy's good daughter. Daddy hopes that you can be happy. This is not only Daddy and your mother's wish, but also your grandfather's wish. Hearing this, Fengjiu's heart warmed. Although she didn't know why he suddenly told her this, she still smiled happily and nodded. And I know, Daddy. She always knew that her family treated her very well. She always knew. So when she knew that her grandfather and the others were buried in the sea of fire, her heart was so sad. Chapter 1673. Brother, you're here? Fengjiu looked back and saw him walking in. She said, Your injury hasn't healed yet. Why did you get out of bed? Didn't I tell you to rest well today? Guan Shilin waved his hand. I can't stay in bed. Besides, it's just a small injury. It's not a big deal. He came to the bedside and looked at Feng Xiao, who was leaning against the headboard. Seeing that his eyes were red, he couldn't help but feel a little strange. Godfather, are you feeling better today? I'm better now. Don't worry. Feng Xiao nodded. That's good. You don't know how worried everyone was when you didn't wake up. Shengwan Wanrong smiled faintly. It's good that you're fine now. It was a false alarm. She paused and asked again, Now that you're all injured, do you plan to rest here or on the spaceship? Let's rest on the spaceship, Fengjiu said. He looked at her parents and said, Dad is fine now that he's awake. We still have to hurry back and find little Feng Yi. I'm worried that the longer we delay, the more dangerous it will be for him. Then, let's get ready and set off. Shengwan Wanrong looked at Feng Xiao and asked, Can we set off in the afternoon? She was worried about his health. She didn't know if the journey would be too much for him. Yes, I'm fine. I'll be fine after resting on the spaceship for a day or two. The most important thing now is to go back and find Feng Yi. He said in a low voice, Father and the others have been killed. As his older brother, I must find Feng Yi. Guan Shilin nodded. Then I'll go tell Du Fan and the others to get ready. With that, he nodded at Feng Jiao and turned to leave. Dad, you rest first. I'll go out and take a look. I'll come back when we're about to set off, Feng Jiao said. He called Leng Shuang, who was guarding outside, and asked her to help him back. Your leg is injured, so don't walk around. If there's anything, just tell them to do it. Feng Xiao couldn't help but say. Looking at her limping, he was worried that her injury would affect her walking in the future. I'm fine. She turned around and smiled. With the help of Leng Shuang, they walked out together. This child is just like that. She can't stay idle. Just let her be. She is a doctor and knows her own situation, Shengwan Wanrong said with a smile. She came to the bedside and sat down. She looked at Feng Xiao and said, Are you really okay? It's fine, Feng Xiao said. Hearing this, Shengwan Wanrong looked at him and said, But why do I feel like something's wrong with you? Was it because he couldn't say it out loud? If you can't say it, then I won't ask. Feng Xiao looked at her and sighed softly. It's really nothing. I just feel like I've encountered too many things recently. Too many sudden changes have made it hard for me to accept them all at once. When I think of Father and the others dying in the fire, when I think of the Phoenix Guards dying in the palace, when I think of Feng Yi and Yang Yang wandering outside and not knowing where they are, my heart really. Chapter 1674. This matter seemed to have been forgotten. Even though Feng Xiao knew about it, he had no intention of speaking it out. He buried this secret in his heart. After sorting out his emotions, he left with them on the spaceship. The dead were gone, and the living were still alive. He should look forward. They still had a long way to go in the future. On the other side of the Xinyuan Empire, when Xinyuan Mose received his father's letter and hurried back, his heart was filled with uneasiness. His mood was heavy all the way. If it wasn't for the urgency of the matter, if it wasn't for the fact that it happened so suddenly, he wouldn't have rushed back to the palace when Feng Jiao's family was in trouble. Master, we're almost at the Imperial City. Should we enter the palace directly or return to the mansion first? Hui Lang asked Xinyuan Mose beside him. Enter the palace. A low voice came out of his mouth. Standing on the spaceship, he looked into the distance with his hands behind his back. The spaceship flew directly through the gate of the Imperial City and stopped at the entrance of the palace. In the spaceship, 16 guards in black jumped down and stood in 2 rows. Then, Xinyuan Mose walked out and alighted from the spaceship, followed by Hui Lang and Ying. Under the escort of everyone, they went all the way to the inner hall. When the guards in the palace saw him, they all bowed their heads respectfully. Seeing that he had returned, everyone was relieved. Your subordinate greets you, master. A secret guard in black came out and knelt on one knee. Xinyuan Mose stopped and looked at the secret guard in front of him. He said in a low voice, Tell me the whole story. After saying that, he continued to walk forward. The shadow guard walked up to him and nodded at Grey Wolf and Shadow. He then said in a low voice, Recently, there has been a group of people trying to rope in other forces. These people have infiltrated our bases to destroy and ambush us. Many people have died, and a few of our bases have been destroyed as well. In addition, the forces in the palace are somewhat scattered. Many people are playing tricks under the table. At the same time, a few other empires are putting pressure on our Xinyuan dynasty. About half a month ago, our monarch was ambushed by a strong enemy when he went hunting. His Dantian was destroyed and his cultivation was crippled. However, we dare not spread the news. I am worried that if the news were to spread, the Xinyuan Empire would be shaken. After hearing the secret guard's words, not only did Xinyuan Mose's face turn as cold as ice, but even Hui Lang and Ying Yi's faces turned extremely grave. Something so big had actually happened. When her master received the letter, it only said that something big had happened in the palace and that she should return quickly, but she did not expect the situation to be so serious. Several empires exerted pressure, their subordinate forces were destroyed, and the forces in the palace were scattered. Who exactly was it? How could he have the ability to throw the Xianyuan Empire into chaos in such a short period of time? How is he now? He asked in a low voice. The secret guard was only startled for a moment. He knew that her master was referring to the monarch. Therefore, he immediately said, "Your subordinate ordered someone to disguise as the monarch." At the same time, the monarch was transferred to a safe place to recuperate. However, all doctors know that the monarch can only live in the state of a mortal for the rest of his life. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose faintly pursed his lips and tightly clenched his fists under his sleeves. His entire body emitted a cold and threatening aura, and his cold voice was like a 1,000-year-old ice pillar that came out of his mouth. "Investigate, at all costs. I want to know the person behind this." Chapter 1675. When Xianyuan Mose arrived at the inner palace, he saw his father recuperating in the palace. It was as if he had aged 10 years in a single night. His spiritual power was completely gone. At this moment, he was lying on the bed like an ordinary old man. His hair was white, and his brows were slightly furrowed. It seemed that he was not sleeping well. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed that the usually hot-tempered, arrogant, and unyielding person would become like this. Even if he did not want to call him father, he was indeed his father. He originally thought that he could be very cold to him, but unexpectedly, when he saw him lying here, his heart was filled with anger. Hui Lang moved a chair to the side of the bed for his master to sit. Then, he retreated with Ing Yi to guard outside the palace. When they were outside, Hui Lang, who had been silent for a long time, could not help but speak. "Who do you think it is? Who has such great ability? The monarch is so strong, but he also—" Ing Yi's eyes were deep. After a moment of silence, he said, "To be able to make the other empires put pressure on us, I'm afraid it is not ordinary. If we do not handle it well, our Xianyuan Empire will be like the Xianyuan dynasty, broken into pieces. Why does it feel like they are targeting us and the Ghost Doctor? Among the opponents and enemies in the past, there has never been such a strong enemy." Hui Lang did not understand. The Yin Palace was so powerful, and they had hidden their bases so carefully. How could they have been discovered by those people? To be able to know their base so clearly, it could only mean that there was a mole among them. Otherwise, it would be impossible to do this. In the palace, Xianyuan Mose watched the person on the bed slowly wake up. The moment he opened his eyes, their eyes met. Both of them were silent. In the end, it was the monarch on the bed who spoke. "You're back? Did the journey go smoothly?" Hearing the weak voice, Xianyuan Mose's eyes moved slightly. He did not answer the question. Instead, he asked, "Do you know who attacked you?" It was not the people of the 8 great empires. The monarch narrowed his eyes as he spoke. It was as though the scene from that day was still fresh in his mind. Those people's skills are very unique. Furthermore, their cultivation is profound, and their martial skills are extraordinary. I'm guessing that they are from the upper reaches of the river. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose frowned. "We have never had any dealings with those people. Why would they suddenly attack us? The other party wants to destroy our Xianyuan Empire. What else could they be up to other than seeking revenge? Those people over there probably aren't interested in the Empire here. Since they aren't interested, the only thing left is to seek revenge." The monarch's voice was extremely slow as he spoke each word slowly. His cultivation was crippled, his spiritual energy scattered, and his inner core shattered. If it wasn't for his nascent soul, he wouldn't have been able to survive. He had been in power for so many years, the ruler of a country, the ruler of a country. He had never imagined that such a day would come. To an immortal cultivator, having his cultivation destroyed and becoming immortal was like being knocked down from the high heavens. If not for the fact that he had experienced so many things and had an extraordinary mind, he would have committed suicide because he couldn't accept it. Chapter 1676. Hearing his words, Xianyuan Mose fell silent. After a long while, he stood up and said, "Take good care of your body. Leave the rest to me." With that, He turned and left without saying anything else. Wait a minute. The monarch stopped him. Xin Yuan Mo stopped and turned back to look at him. Is there anything else? Didn't you bring back your wife? The monarch asked. Something happened in her family, so she rushed back to deal with it. With that, he left without saying anything else. Hui Lang and Ying, who were guarding outside, saw him come out and quickly followed him to one of the palaces in the palace. This was the palace where their master usually did his work. Now that they saw their master coming here, they knew that their master did not intend to return home. Just as Xin Yuan Mo sat down in the palace and picked up the latest information to read, a secret guard hurried in to report. Master, King Qing entered the palace and wanted to see the monarch. Now he is making a scene in front of the main hall and has injured a few palace guards. Hearing this, Xin Yuan Mo frowned and said in a low voice, "Throw them out." But King Cheng brought a few commanders who were in charge of the palace and said that they knew that the monarch was harmed and his cultivation was destroyed. They wanted to enter the palace to protect the monarch and kill anyone who disobeyed. The secret guard hesitated and said, "Now that they are in a deadlock, I saw that they wanted to break into the East Palace and quickly came to report. Master, please tell me what to do." After all, King Cheng was a member of the Xinyuan royal family. If he really wanted to kill him, he was afraid. Hearing this, Xinyuan Mose put down the information in his hands with a sullen face, stood up, and strode out. Hui Lang and Ying Yi saw this and immediately followed. In front of the main hall, a slightly plump middle-aged man in a purple robe stood with his hands behind his back. He was glaring angrily at the guards in front of him. Behind him, there were more than a dozen guards in Imperial Guard uniforms and 1 or 2 middle-aged men in official robes. "How dare you? You even dare to block my path? You must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts. Step aside. If you don't get out of the way, be careful that I don't order you to be killed." The purple-robed king, Cheng, shouted sternly. With a flick of his sleeve, a stream of air gushed out and blew away the guards in front of him. Due to his status, the guards were more or less tolerant, but now that they were injured by the opponent's airflow, they could only forcefully suppress it, but they didn't dare to step back even a little bit to let them in. It was only when they heard a low and cold voice that the guards were overjoyed and immediately raised their heads to look. "Oh, how come I don't know that anyone can kill anyone in the palace if they want to?" Everyone shuddered when they heard the voice. Even the purple-robed king, Cheng, couldn't help but reveal a trace of fear in his eyes. When he turned around and saw the black-robed figure walking towards him, a smile involuntarily appeared on his originally ferocious face. Moses back. He went up to him with the attitude of an elder. "Mose, it's good that you're back. It's good that you're back. You don't know what happened in the palace when you left. I was worried at first, but now that I see you back, I can finally rest assured. Your Highness the Crown Prince." When the guards saw him, they hurriedly knelt on one knee and bowed respectfully and reverently. Chapter 1677. Finally, his gaze landed on the Imperial Guards with swords. His voice was cold and sinister. Who allowed the Imperial Guards to bring swords into the palace? When the Imperial Guards heard this, their hearts trembled and they immediately knelt down. "Your Highness, please forgive us." When King Cheng saw this, he quickly said, "Mose, it's like this, Before he could finish, he was interrupted by Xinyuan Mose's voice. "Hui Lang, Ying Yi, chop off their right arms." "Yes." After receiving the order, Hui Lang and Ying Yi immediately responded. Before the Imperial Guards could react, they instantly took action. A cold light flashed past in an instant. Sharp screams pierced through the Imperial Guards' eardrums and reverberated in the sky above the Imperial Palace, causing everyone's heart to tremble. His Highness had returned, and the Imperial Palace had been reorganized. Who would dare to be impudent? King Cheng saw the dozens of arms fly out and fall in front of him one by one. The bloody scene made his legs go weak and his body involuntarily tremble. He was afraid of Xinyuan Mose. His methods were so ruthless. He was a cold-blooded and heartless person, a demon who killed without batting an eyelid. If he wanted to kill someone, all he had to do was to open his mouth. He did not even care who the other party was. He was even sure that if he had crossed his bottom line, it would not be these imperial guards who would have their hands chopped off. It would be him, King Chung. When he thought of this, his heart could not help but turn cold and his face became paler. He really should not have entered the imperial palace today. He thought that Xinyuan Mose had not returned yet. Who knew that he was already in the imperial palace? Xinyuan Mose ignored the imperial guards who were lying on the ground and wailing. He also ignored the dozens of broken arms piled in front of King Chung. He walked forward step by step and stopped in front of King Chung. "What did you say earlier? Why did you come in?" King Chung swallowed his saliva and raised his sleeve to wipe the cold sweat on his forehead. He said in a trembling voice, "No, nothing. I just wanted to come in and see you, your father. But since you're back, then I can go back in peace." "That's good," Xinyuan Mose said with his hands behind his back. His deep and sharp eyes stared at King Chung in front of him and said in a cold voice, "I don't want to see anyone trying to fish in troubled waters and stir up trouble. If anyone dares to scheme in front of me, their fate will be worse than death." Yes, I know, Mose. You won't let those schemers off the hook. If I find them, I will not let them off," King Chung hurriedly replied and pretended. Hearing this, Xinyuan Mose glanced at them and said, "Let's go back." "All right, then I'll head back first. Please send my regards to your imperial father. I'll definitely visit him another day when I have time." Palace, the broken arms on the ground were quickly taken care of by the imperial guards. Not even the slightest trace of blood was left. Xinyuan Mose turned around and returned to the imperial palace after everything had calmed down. The news of Xinyuan Mose's return to the imperial palace quickly spread. Along with the news of him becoming the regent in the imperial palace, those who were ready to cause trouble could not help but give up. Some did not dare to act rashly. Chapter 1678. On the other side of the Phoenix dynasty, Fengjiu and the others finally returned to the imperial city. The spaceship flew straight in and stopped at the gate of the imperial city. When the news of their return spread, the leaders of the various forces and family clans in the imperial city all sent people to keep an eye on them. In fact, the Fengs treated them really well. However, they didn't know what kind of expert they had offended this time. That was why they had brought such a huge disaster upon themselves. Even though they wanted to help, they didn't dare to. Now that they heard that Fengjiu and Feng Xiao had returned, everyone's attention fell on the imperial city. Old Man Gung was the first to rush to the imperial city after hearing the news. The Phoenix Guards and the people of Yandian also rushed to the gate to welcome them. When the 8 captains of the Phoenix Guards saw their master, Fengjiu, return, their eyes couldn't help but redden. "Greetings, master!" After the 8 of them came forward to salute, they also saluted Feng Xiao, family head, ghost doctor. Rin Xiang stepped forward and saluted. "I'm here on master's orders to help you. If there's anything you need, you can tell me. I'll arrange it." Fengjiu's gaze swept past the 8 Phoenix Guards. He saw that Luo Yu, Fan Lin, Qi Kong, and the others were all fine. However, they couldn't hide the pain in their eyes. On the other hand, Rin Xiang was the head of the Cool Breeze gang. He was the person that Xinyuan Mose had left behind to take charge of Yandian's forces. This time, it was all thanks to him that they were able to assassinate the people who were hiding here. "Where were my grandfather and the others burned?" she asked, her gaze falling on Luo Yu. Luo Yu lowered his head slightly and said, "I'll take you there, master." Thus, they all led the way in front and brought Fengjiu and the others to the place where Feng Sanyuan and Sushi were burned that night. The group walked quietly into the imperial city. Looking at the imperial city that had obviously been repaired and the Phoenix Guards that were missing half, they didn't feel good. Especially Feng Xiao. Since stepping into the imperial city, he didn't speak again. He just walked step by step and looked. Every step was unusually heavy. "Master, this is the palace." Luo Yu stopped in his tracks, looked at her and Feng Xiao, and said, "That night, other than the 2 children, little Feng Yi and Zhao Yang, no one else survived. When we came in through the secret passage, we saw the retired emperor, who was riddled with wounds from afar. He was injured from the back by 2 strong men of the fairy realm, and he was sent flying into the raging flames." At this point, he stopped and lowered his head. We wanted to rush out to save them, but in the end, we didn't. We deserved to die. The 8 of them knelt down together. Fengjiu took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. Chapter 1679. Shengguan Wanrong, who was standing at the side, also knelt down quietly. After kowtowing 3 times, she stood beside Feng Xiao. Seeing this, Fengjiu also knelt down beside her father and kowtowed 3 times towards the ruins. Grandfather, grandmother, don't worry. We'll definitely find little Feng Yi. Guan Shilin, who was standing at the side, also knelt down with Fengjiu and kowtowed 3 times respectfully. Compared to his biological grandfather, this grandfather, who was not related by blood, treated him better and cared more about him. After kowtowing, they headed towards the main hall. When they arrived at the main hall, Ren Xiang asked, "We haven't found the person behind this. Aren't you worried that you'll attract the attention of those people by taking a flying ship back here? Those people's abilities are all above the fairy realm. They really can't be underestimated. If they set their sights on you, I'm afraid the consequences will be unimaginable." Even though Feng Jiuhe's cultivation level was quite high, and she had the protection of an ancient divine beast, if she was surrounded and attacked by so many fairy realm experts, she would not be able to protect herself, let alone the others. He originally thought that they would return quietly, but he did not expect that the flying ship would fly past the imperial city and land at the entrance of the imperial palace. Once they appeared, the whole city knew about it. Naturally, if there were still people watching in the dark, they would definitely notice. Fengjiu was silent for a moment. Then she said, "We already met those people on the way back. Moreover, I also heard from my father that the people from that force know that you've ambushed and killed their people. It can be said that our every move here is under the eyes of those people. There's nowhere to hide." Hearing this, Ren Xiang, Luo Yu, and the others were shocked. "They know? Then you?" Feng Xiao took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. After calming himself down, he said in a low voice, "I don't know what they're planning. They only intercepted us on the way back, but they didn't kill us. We've been discussing and researching on the way back, but we didn't find anything. All right, do you have any clues? Do you know who these people are?" "These people aren't from the 8 great empires." Ren Xiang glanced at them and said, "You may not know this, but even the 8 great empires are not the entire continent. Compared to other places, the region where the 8 great empires are located can only be considered as the lower reaches. The upper reaches occupy no territory, and there are as many nascent soul experts there as there are feathers. I have analyzed that only the upper reaches have such strength. Only the upper reaches would dare to make an enemy of Yen Hall." As for the upper reaches, Feng Xiao had only vaguely heard of it, but he had never been there, let alone come into contact with it. It was just that he did not expect this matter to be related to the forces there. If that was the case, he was afraid that this would be troublesome. His mood was a bit heavy, especially when he thought about that person telling him about Xiaojiu. They actually knew about such a secret. This kind of ability was really frightening. If they really wanted to exterminate the Feng family, he was afraid that for now, they probably won't attack us. Fengjiu stood up and said, "Since we are still safe for now, let's find little Feng Yi first." Chapter 1680. Are there any other secret passages in the palace other than the one Master took us through? Luo Yu asked. He looked at the Master in front of him and said, "We only found 2 secret passages in the palace. We don't know about the others." What they knew was limited, but they searched everywhere. However, they didn't find any clues. Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed slightly. "There is another secret passage. I think they should have gone through it." After saying this, she stepped out. The people behind her quickly followed her out. Under Fengjiu's lead, they came to the secret passage where she sent little Feng Yi and Zhao Yang away. They found that the secret passage's mechanism was destroyed. The stone door couldn't be opened and was completely sealed. They were more and more certain that they left from here. Let people open this place and search along this secret passage. In addition, send a group of people to Tianlin City to search. If I'm not wrong, they should be there. Okay, we'll look for them right away. Luo Yu and the others responded and quickly split up. On the other side, in a human market adjacent to the imperial city, there were many slaves locked in large iron cages. There were big and small slaves, old and young, male and female. They were all categorized into 3 classes and locked in iron cages to be sold. Most of these slaves, except for some who were sold by their masters, were captured and brought here by others. Among them, children were the most important. Zhao Yang and Little Fengye were also locked up in an iron cage inside the building. The 2 of them sat against the cage. Their faces were dirty, and the clothes on their bodies were no longer recognizable. They escaped the capture of the tall and thin man last time, but they didn't escape the fate of being targeted by human traffickers. Several human traffickers were waiting for them in the dark. They couldn't escape and finally fell into the hands of those people and were locked here. Yang, what should we do? It's okay. Don't worry, I have a way. Zhao Yang whispered a few words in his ear. At the same time, he took out 2 small pills from his waist and swallowed one for each of them. After about half an hour, the 2 of them were covered with red spots. They cried out, "Ah, so uncomfortable, so uncomfortable." The 2 of them rolled on the ground and cried, "What's going on?" The people outside came in to take a look. They saw 5 or 6 children squatting on one side of the cage, while 2 people on the other side were rolling on the ground. Their skin was covered with red spots. Why do these 2 brats have red dots on their bodies? A man with a whip in his hand asked curiously. Another person said, "Look at that red dot. Why does it look like smallpox? Don't tell me these 2 brats are suffering from smallpox?" As he spoke, he couldn't help but take a few steps back. When the man heard what he said, he was shocked and hurriedly retreated a little. Smallpox? If those people are infected, how are we going to explain it to the higher-ups? Lock those 2 brats in the woodshed at the back first, then find a doctor to check if it's smallpox. So, the 2 of them discussed and called 2 other men who were doing odd jobs. They took Yang and Little Fengye out of the iron cage and locked them in the woodshed at the back. The 2 of them were thrown into the woodshed and cried a few times. After those people went away, Zhao Yang went forward and helped Little Fengye up. "Get up. Let's find a way to leave here." Chapter 1681. Wait a minute. Zhao Yang squatted down and took out the universal bag hidden in his boots. He took out an iron wire from it and fiddled with it for a while. Then he opened the locked door. Immediately, he pulled Little Fengye and ran to the back door. "Take the antidote." Zhao Yang handed him the antidote and took him into an empty courtyard. The 2 of them sat in the corner and gasped. Yang, why do you have these things?" Little Fengye blinked and asked curiously. "The princess gave them to me for self-defense. I have been keeping them." He thought as he spoke. After resting for a while, he said, "We can't stay here. If those people know that we escaped, they may look for us in the city. Let's go." "Where are we going?" "Back to the palace?" Little Fengye asked. "Let's go out of the city gate first." He pulled him to the city gate. He planned to leave the city first and ask for information along the way. Yang, how can you open the lock with that iron wire?" Little Fengye asked curiously. He found that he didn't know anything that Yang knew. "I learned how to open locks. Not only can I use the iron wire, but I can also open the lock with a pin," Zhao Yang said while paying attention to the people on the street. When he saw several people looking around on the street, he couldn't help but speed up his pace. "Let's go. They're coming." Little Fengye didn't dare to ask any more questions and ran with his short legs. The 2 of them blended into the crowd and ran out of the city gate. After entering the small forest, Little Fengye tripped over a tree branch and fell forward. His hands were scraped and bleeding. He looked at his bleeding hands in a daze. Looking at the blood, he couldn't help but think of the bloody scene that night. He sat there in a daze for a long time without any reaction. "You're bleeding. Let me bandage it for you." Zhao Yang blamed himself. He was older than him, so he ran faster. However, he didn't take into account that he couldn't keep up with his speed and made him fall. "I miss my father and mother." After a long time, Little Fengye raised his head and looked at Zhao Yang, who was bandaging him. He said in a soft voice with grievance, Yang, I miss my father and mother." Zhao Yang was slightly stunned. After a long silence, he sat down and said, "You'll see them later." He also missed his father and mother. This time, they might really be gone. When will we see them later? Little Feng Yi asked crisply. Zhao Yang thought and said, "When we find the princess, when we find her, we will see your father and mother. Let's find someone and see if a Jew, T. If he didn't mention it, how could he ask? If he didn't mention it, no one would know. Then how could he know what he wanted to know? Because if some people who have a grudge against them know that you are the little uncle of the princess, they will capture you to threaten them. At that time, we will also be in danger." Chapter 1682. Then let's go to the big tree inside to have a rest. Zhao Yang pointed to a big tree inside and led him inside, holding his hand. In the evening, as the sun set in the west, half of the sky was dyed with red clouds. Night was coming, and the temperature in the grove gradually dropped, becoming a little cool. Under the big tree, two children were sleeping in each other's arms. They slept soundly in this grove without any precaution. After all, they were just children, and they had just escaped. It was inevitable that they would fall asleep when they relaxed. However, this small forest was not safe. Under the illumination of the sunset, the small forest seemed to be covered in a layer of red clouds, revealing traces of red. About 100 meters away from here, a fierce tiger that came out to hunt for food was stretching its body, opening its mouth and swinging its tiger tail, walking step by step in the small forest. Because this grove was backed by a deep mountain, it was inevitable that some fierce beasts would come in and out. Ordinary people would walk on the main road and would not go into the grove. Therefore, there were very few opportunities to meet fierce beasts. Who would have thought that these two unlucky children would run into each other? As the ferocious tiger approached step by step, its ferocious and bloodthirsty eyes searching for prey, the two children were still sleeping soundly under the tree. When the ferocious tiger smelled the scent of living people, it followed the scent step by step and finally saw the two delicious prey on the tree. 4 fierce beasts, human children were easier to hunt because their strength was limited. Often, when they met the fierce beasts, they could only wait to be eaten. Chi! The fierce tiger's nose was scratched by the grass, which made it subconsciously snort. 2 breaths came out from its nose, but it was also this sound that made Zhao Yang, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly open his eyes. Almost at the moment when he opened his eyes, Zhao Yang felt the pressing danger. He thought that those people had caught up with him again, so he quickly got up and shook little Feng Yi to wake him up. Wake up, we have to hurry." Before he finished speaking, his whole body froze. Less than 10 meters away from them, a ferocious tiger was crouching there, baring its sharp teeth and drooling as it stared at them. Seeing that he had woken up and discovered it, the ferocious tiger let out a low roar, crouching down and kicking its hind legs, fiercely pouncing towards them. "Roar! Yang Yang wada!" Little Feng Yi, who had just woken up, didn't have time to open his eyes and murmured. He felt that his whole body was pushed away by Zhao Yang and rolled into the grass. His body hurt and he couldn't help but cry out in pain. "It hurts! Yang Yang, what are you doing?" He was stunned and sat there motionlessly with his eyes wide open. On the other side, Yang Yang, who had pushed him away, had a piece of cloth torn off by the tiger's sharp claws. The sharp claws had directly scratched his chest, causing a few streaks of blood to flow out. "Quickly climb up the tree," Zhao Yang shouted. He was afraid that the tiger would attack little Feng Yi. He could only wave his hand and shout at the tiger, "Here! I'm here!" Little Feng Yi suddenly came back to his senses and saw the tiger roaring and pouncing towards Yang Yang. He was so scared that he quickly circulated his spiritual power and jumped up. He hugged the tree tightly and shouted at Yang Yang, "Come up quickly! Yang Yang, come up quickly!" Chapter 1683. In the sky above, among the white clouds, a white-robed old man was sitting cross-legged on a flying disc. He was flying with his eyes closed, as if he was meditating or resting. However, The divine sense that was released could hear the voices of the people below. He could vaguely hear that among the chaotic voices, there seemed to be the cries of children for help and the roars of ferocious tigers. Hearing this sound, he slowly opened his eyes. He made some calculations with his hand and looked down. Through the clouds, he could see that in the forest below, a 3-year-old child was hugging the branch of a large tree and crying for help. Under the tree, a 7 or 8-year-old boy was drenched in blood. While dodging the tiger's attacks, he tried to use the dagger in his hand to stab the tiger. However, the little boy was small and weak, so he couldn't kill the tiger at all. The little boy was hit by the tiger, and his small body flew a few meters away before he convulsed and fainted. Just as he was about to bite the little boy who had fainted, the little boy on the tree stopped crying, took off his boots, and smashed them at the tiger. Unexpectedly, it attracted the tiger's attention. Roar! The ferocious tiger let out a low roar and fiercely charged forward. It used the tiger's strength to fiercely smash into the tree. In an instant, the child who was hugging the branch cried out in alarm and fell to the ground. Ah! Little Fignet covered his eyes with both hands in horror and began to cry. He was afraid that he would be eaten by the tiger. He was afraid that if he died, only his bones would be left. Perhaps the tiger would also eat his bones, and then there would be no bones left. However, in his fear, he closed his eyes and didn't feel the pain of crashing into the ground. He didn't feel the pain of being bitten by the tiger's mouth and sharp teeth. Instead, he heard the cry of a beast. It's okay. An aged yet amiable voice entered little Fignet's ears, causing her to be startled. Her little hand, that was covering her eyes, slowly moved away from the small gap between her little fingers. Through the gap of her little fingers, she saw an old grandpa in white clothes, with white hair and white eyebrows. Grandad Deity. You must be Grandad Deity. The little fellow opened his hand in surprise. Only then did he realize that his body was suspended in midair. Grandad Deity waved the horsetail whisk, and he slowly landed on the ground. Hearing little Fengye's words, the old man stroked his beard and laughed. He seemed to be very happy. He flew down from the air and landed on the ground. He got up and walked to F.A. Zhao Yang's side to check his injuries. Grandad Deity, how is Yang Yang? Will Yang Yang die? Little Fengye asked worriedly. The old man stroked his beard and shook his head with a smile. He won't die. This is a predestined fate, and also a fortuitous encounter. He took out an elixir and stuffed it into Zhao Yang's mouth. When he probed Zhao Yang's aura, a hint of surprise flashed across his eyes. This physique is indeed a rare cultivation genius. Little Fengye didn't understand and tilted his head to look at him. He saw Grandad Deity touch his head and then place his hand on it. He didn't know what he did, but he heard his emotional voice spread over. It seems like it is the two of you. The old man's loving gaze landed on the two of them, and he smiled. Follow me. The moment he said that, he waved his horsetail whisk, and Zhao Yang, who was lying on the ground, was moved onto the flying disc. Chapter 1684. Go where you should go. The old man stroked his beard and smiled. He reached out his hand. Come with me. But I still have to find my father and mother. I still have to find my niece. Little Fengye put his little hands behind his back and took a step back. If I leave, I won't be able to see my father and mother. My niece won't be able to find me either. The old man chuckled. He looked at him deeply and said meaningfully, It's not that you won't be able to see her, it's just that the time hasn't come yet. Why? The little guy seemed to like to ask why, because he didn't understand what he was talking about. The old man, who didn't want to say much, saw the little guy take a step back and hide his little hands behind his back. He didn't want to leave with him, so he patiently explained, Let me ask you, did your mother have a difficult birth when she gave birth to you? Little Fengye blinked and thought for a moment. He nodded blankly. Yes. My father and mother said that they almost died when they gave birth to me. It was my niece who helped my mother deliver the baby. That's why we were able to survive. It could be said that he had heard them talk about this since he was young. They said that if it wasn't for Fengye, they would all have died. But what did that have to do with this? The old man smiled and flicked the horsetail whisk in his hand. He slowly said, "Life and death are determined by the heavens. However, some people defy the heavens and change their fates. It's because of this that many strange things happen." He paused and looked at him. "Do you know why this old Taoist is here?" Seeing the little guy shake his head in a daze, he smiled and said, "That's because you and this old Taoist are fated to be master and disciple. And this fate between master and disciple is also a strange fate. It's born from the changes of the heavens. You are fated to be with me, but you are not fated to be with your parents. Therefore, the person who appeared here is me. The person who saved you from danger is also me, not your family. Do you understand now?" The old man asked with a smile. The little guy didn't quite understand, but he understood the gist of it. He asked, "Then will I be able to see my father, mother, and niece in the future?" "If it's fate, of course." When he heard that, little Feng Yi lowered his head and thought about it. He saw that Yang was unconscious and asked, "Granddad Deity wants to take me and Yang as disciples? Why did Granddad Deity say, 'I am an old Taoist'? Am I a monk? I don't want to be shaved bald." That hearing the child's words, the old man chuckled and said, "Let's go. Follow me and you'll find out." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and boarded the flying disc. Seeing this, little Fia bit her lip and hesitated for a moment before following up. She stepped onto the flying disc, which flew up and disappeared into the clouds. A day later, Fengjiu and the others followed the secret path and found the town that the two children had been in. They started to investigate and confirmed that the two children had been here before. They followed the clues and found out that they had escaped after being sold to the slave market by human traffickers. Therefore, they followed the nearby route and entered the boundary to search. Unexpectedly, they found torn rags and shoes in the small forest, as well as spots of blood on the ground. It could be said that the Feng Wei and the others had a heavy heart because the clues ended there. They could only send a letter to Fengjiu and ask her to come personally. Chapter 1685. "Mistress, it's here." Luo Yu stepped forward and showed her a shoe and a piece of cloth stained with blood. Although this material is dirty and messy, it's still obvious that it's their clothes. According to the investigation, someone heard the roar of a ferocious tiger coming from this small forest. I'm afraid that little Feng Ye's clothes and Yang Yang's clothes were both custom-made. Upon closer inspection, it wasn't hard to find that the material was the same. However, they never expected that when they found them, they would see blood and cloth all over the ground. Fengjiu held the shoe, and her heart sank. She didn't know what to say for a long time. Were the two of them really gone? Did they die in the jaws of a tiger? "Let's go back," Feng Xiao said. With a pale face, she turned around and walked back. Her father and the others died in a sea of fire. Now, he couldn't even save his little brother and let him die in the jaws of a tiger. How could he face her father and the others when he went to the underworld? Seeing her father turn and walk back, Fengjiu narrowed her eyes. Her heart was heavy, and she didn't know what to do. Recent events had happened one after another, catching her off guard. Now, the enemy was watching from the shadows, but she didn't have the ability to deal with them. She really didn't know when all of this would end, and when would she be able to turn things around? After returning to the palace, Fengjiu walked towards the main hall and saw Ren Xiang walking towards her with a grave expression. Seeing this, she stopped and asked, "Why do you look so pale? Did something happen?" Ren Xiang looked at her and nodded. "Ghost Doctor, I have something to tell you. It's about Mistress." Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flickered. She walked with him to the back hall and sat down in the pavilion. "What is it? Speak." Something happened in the Xianyuan Empire recently. The emperor's cultivation was crippled and his inner core was shattered. He is now an ordinary person. Due to the empire's internal and external troubles, Mistress can't come here for the time being. She sent someone to deliver this letter to you. Ren Xiang took out the letter and handed it to Fengjiu. Fengjiu's heart sank when he heard Ren Xiang's words. Even the Xianyuan Empire was affected? Xianyuan Moses' father, the king with the aura of an expert, had his cultivation crippled, just like an ordinary person? The more he thought about it, the more shocked he was. This force actually wanted to destroy their Phoenix dynasty and Xinyuan Empire? She opened the envelope and took a look at the letter Xinyuan Mose had written to her. In it, he had told her everything that he had to deal with recently, including the fact that his father's cultivation had been crippled. After reading his letter, she thought for a while and said to Rin Xiang, "Things on my side are already like this, and there's nothing to protect. How about this? Bring your men back to the Xinyuan Empire to help him." But the enemy on your side is still that Rin Xiang was a little hesitant. The enemy was still in the dark, and he didn't know if they had already left. Was it really okay for him to leave now? Although he was also quite worried about his master's side, his master also placed great importance on her safety. He was worried that if something really happened to her after he left, what should he do? "Don't worry and go. I'm going to discuss the matters here with my father. I already have a plan in mind," she said, telling him not to worry. Chapter 1686. All right then, I'll go back and make some arrangements first. Rin Xiang cupped his hands and left. Seeing him leave, Fengjiu sat down for a while before heading to the main hall. She only saw Guan Shilin in the main hall, but her father and the others were nowhere to be seen. She asked, "Brother, where's my father?" Father went back to his room. I saw that he didn't seem to be in a good state of mind, so I let him go back and rest. Too many things have happened recently, and I'm worried that he won't be able to withstand so many shocks. Guan Shilin sighed, looked at her, and asked, "Why did Rin Xiang look for you?" He told me that something happened to Immerse, and his father's cultivation was destroyed. Now he's like an ordinary person, and his body is even worse than an ordinary person's. In addition, the 8 great empires are pressuring them, so their troubles are no less than ours. Speaking of this, Fengjiu sighed softly, leaned back in her chair, and narrowed her eyes. Too many things have happened recently, and I'm a little unprepared. Also, I don't know if the enemy in the dark has left yet. Will they still make a move against us? So I thought of a plan. I wanted to discuss it with Father and the others. But looking at the situation, I'm afraid they don't have the energy to do so. "What plan?" Guan Shilin asked. Fengjiu opened her eyes, sat up straight, and looked at him. "I want to abolish the imperial system, and I want the Feng family to disappear from here." Hearing this, Guan Shilin's heart trembled. "You mean, you want to overthrow the Phoenix dynasty that we worked so hard to build? Abolish the imperial system? Let there be no more monarchy here? Only the great families and other forces? Is that what you mean?" "That's right." She nodded. "It's easy to build a dynasty, but it's not easy to protect one, especially now that we've provoked an enemy that we can't deal with. If we continue to protect this dynasty, there will be no people left in the end, and the dynasty will only be an empty shell. There's no point for such a dynasty to exist. I want to take this opportunity to overthrow the dynasty and let father and mother live in seclusion to cultivate. When they are strong enough, it will be easy for us to establish a new dynasty." Her voice paused, and her eyes were gloomy. "I have a premonition that if we continue to guard the current Phoenix dynasty, I'm afraid things will get even more out of hand. Grandfather and the others are already gone, and I don't dare to imagine it. If something happens to father and mother, then..." She wanted to protect her family and the people she valued. However, before she could reach the peak of her strength, if something happened to them, then even if she stood at the peak of the world in the future and had unparalleled strength, what was the use? After hearing her words, Guan Shilin fell into deep thought. After a long while, he said, "You can discuss this matter with your parents. Although I think it's a pity, I'll support whatever decision you make. I believe that as long as you tell them in detail, they'll understand. Moreover, we've lost so many Phoenix guards and our combat power is weak. Even if the person behind the scenes doesn't make a move, I'm afraid that the other countries will take the opportunity to make a move. Since that's the case, why don't we arrange a way out as soon as possible?" Chapter 1687. On the other side, the person Fengjiu and the rest were searching for was currently listening to a black-robed man report the latest news. "Master, some other powers have already begun to search for the Star of the Phoenix. Some have even gone to the heavenly mountain to ask the elder Tianji. There's news that the elders of those sects already know who the Star of the Phoenix is and have secretly sent people to protect her. They want to bring the Star of the Phoenix back to their sections. The Star of the Phoenix? The person inside sneered. What destined Star of the Phoenix? The ruler of the world? She's just a woman. What can she do? Those old farts love to play tricks. However, since they want to play, how can we not play with them? The voice paused and carried a hint of indifference. Since you've sent people out, have you followed them? Have you found out the direction they've gone? Also, who exactly is the Star of the Phoenix that they speak of? The kneeling black-robed man, when Fong, could not help but lower his head. This subordinate, and the rest cannot follow their tracks. When the person inside heard this, his voice turned cold and gloomy. Since you don't know, then why are you still kneeling here? Why aren't you looking for her? Yes. The black-robed man replied, then quickly retreated. At this moment, another black-robed man came in from outside and reported, Master, Han Rong requests an audience. Let him in? Yes. The black-robed man replied and walked out. Not long after, a middle-aged man with a pale face walked in. This person was dressed in gray and his hair was white. His figure was thin and his face was pale. His entire aura was eerie and strange. He walked forward step by step and bowed to the figure behind the beaded curtain. Han Rong greets the Honorable Lord. Han Rong, did your master ask you to bring some news this time? The person inside asked. Looking at the movement of the vague silhouette, he seemed to be eating fruits. Reporting to the Honorable Lord, my master asked me to bring you some news. Han Rong looked at the person inside and replied slowly. Speak. My master said that he received news that the Star of the Phoenix is the princess of the Phoenix dynasty, Fengjiu. She cannot be left alive. She must be killed before her wings are fully grown to prevent future troubles. The Star of the Phoenix is Fengjiu? The person seemed to be surprised. Your information is correct? That Fengjiu is just SOSO. He paused and asked with a smile, or did you know that this honorable lord didn't exterminate the Foam clan? So you purposely came here to say this? Honorable Lord, I believe that the Honorable Lord will do it if the Honorable Lord's the Honorable Lord. I believe the Honorable Lord will do it of the Honorable Lord's family. I believe the Honorable Lord will do it. Honorable to Lord, the Honorable Lord. If the Honorable Lord, Chapter 1688. This sovereign will tell you something you don't know. That person paused for a moment before continuing. Perhaps you don't know. This Fengjiu isn't the original Fengjiu. She should have been possessed by someone else. Her body was taken over by a strange soul that came out of nowhere and became the current Fengjiu. If I want to kill these ants, I only need to say a word. I can make them die without a burial ground with just a flick of my finger. However, after discovering this interesting matter, I would like to see how Feng Xiao and the others will treat the person who has taken over his daughter's body after they find out about this. Killing someone is easy, but don't you think it's more interesting to torture her and destroy her mind? Seeing her being questioned by the loved ones she valued, seeing her being betrayed, seeing her being abandoned by her loved ones, and suffering physical and mental pain as she dies, this is much more interesting than killing her with a single blow. Don't you think so? Hearing this, Han Rong's eyes lit up. Sovereign Lord is wise. Seemingly satisfied with these few words, that person continued. As for the Emperor of Xinyuan Empire, even though he isn't dead yet, he's no different from a cripple now. His cultivation has been crippled, his strength has dissipated, and his inner core has been shattered. He has fallen from the lofty peak to the bottom of the earth, becoming the lowest soil in the land. Right now, it's easy for anyone to kill him. Even if they don't kill him, he can only wait for his death. Sovereign Lord is wise. Han Rong was able to take revenge all because of Sovereign Lord's help. Han Rong will never dare to forget Sovereign Lord's help. He immediately knelt down and bowed, seemingly very moved. That's enough. This sovereign isn't a good person, and you aren't a good person either. Your master is even less of a good person. That person waved his hand and said, We're just using each other. Go back and tell your master that Fengjiu's words are complete nonsense. If he doesn't believe it, wait until I'm tired of playing with him, and I'll take that Fengjiu's life for you to see. Yes, then Han Rong will take his leave first. He cupped his hands and bowed before turning to leave. Outside, his footsteps paused, and he raised his head to look at the sky, revealing a sinister smile. Fengjiu, you also have a day like this. If it wasn't for Fengjiu's appearance, he would still be the respected Uncle Han of the Xinyuan mansion. If it wasn't for Fengjiu's help, he wouldn't have been beaten down to the mundane world, personally crippled by Xinyuan Mo's, crippled his cultivation, and chased out of the imperial city. In his opinion, he was being merciful to him, but he didn't know that it was worse than death for him. His resentments and his resentment, Aunt's soul's wandering to sis until he meets time. He's to meet his now. He wanted Fengjiu to lose his family, to lose everything. He wanted Xinyuan Mo's to lose the entire Xinyuan Empire. He wanted his father to fall from the clouds to the mundane world. Everything they've given him, he wanted to take it all back. Chapter 1689. Not long after Han Rong left, another black-clothed person came in and handed over a message. When the person inside saw the message on the letter, he snorted coldly. This Feng Xiao actually suppressed this matter? What a surprise! He crumpled the letter in his hand, and it turned into ashes that disappeared in his palm. Since it's like this, then let's help them. Cut the weeds and dig up the roots. This lord wants to see if that Fengjiu is really the Phoenix Star. However, things were always unexpected. A month later, the people here received another piece of news. Master, a month ago, a force launched an attack on the Phoenix dynasty on a night. They annihilated their entire group, and even the entire palace was turned into ashes. No one survived. The Feng family's people are all dead? That lord was a bit surprised. It wasn't our people who did it? Then who was it? We didn't see anyone escape alive. According to our people, the palace was set up with a barrier at that time. It was impossible for the people inside to escape. Also, it wasn't our people who did it. The black-clothed person reported. Fengjiu is also dead? Did you see the corpse? What about her ancient divine, beast fire phoenix? That person asked again. He felt that this matter was strange. How could it die so easily? That night, we saw the ancient divine beast fire phoenix appear to fight. However, it was shot down by an arrow in the end. Its entire body caught fire, and it fell into the flames and disappeared without a trace. The black-clothed person paused and said, "Our people saw it with their own eyes. It shouldn't be fake. However, there is a strange matter." Oh, what is it? Before this, Feng Xiao had issued an imperial order. He said that the Phoenix Guards had suffered heavy losses. He said that they provoked a strong enemy and couldn't protect the Phoenix dynasty. From the day the imperial order was issued, the system of the dynasty was abolished. In the future, there would only be the various family forces, and there would no longer be the imperial family ruling. Hearing this, that lord behind the scenes was silent. He tapped his finger on the table, making knocking sounds. After a long time, he said, "Interesting." He gave it up just like that. He really is willing to give up everything that he obtained with great difficulty. However, are the Feng family's people really dead? I won't believe it if I don't see the corpse. Master, do you suspect that they're trying to escape? The man in black asked. Don't you think so? The man in black pondered for a moment and said, That night, I heard screams coming from inside. Furthermore, the barrier didn't disperse until the fire burned everything to ashes. How could those people have the strength to escape under such circumstances? Forget it. Since they're dead, then they're dead. Who cares if they escaped or not? You just have to send the news out and get someone to bring it to Han Rong. Whether it's true or not, Han Rong will investigate. He waved his hand, indicating for him to leave. Yes. The black-clothed man bowed and left respectfully. In the Xinyuan Empire, after hearing the news brought back by Ren Xiang, Xinyuan Mo's asked, How is it? Where are they? Is everything all right? Ren Xiang smiled and said, Don't worry, Master. The ghost doctor has arranged everything and avoided those people's eyes and ears. At this moment, they should already be out of the Phoenix dynasty's territory. The ghost doctor said that after she has settled her parents and family, she will send someone to deliver a letter to Master. Chapter 1690. However, this was also good. At least before the enemy was clear, they would not be in a dangerous situation where the enemy was in the dark while they were in the light. Master, this is the pill that the ghost doctor asked me to bring back. She said that it can repair the Emperor's damaged inner core. She said that even if his cultivation is destroyed, he can still cultivate from the beginning. The pill inside is for the Emperor to take regularly. When she comes over, she will help the Emperor take a look at the situation. Rinxiang handed the pills over to him. His heavy heart finally eased a little after returning to his side. He knew that with his master's strength and methods, as long as he was in charge, he would definitely be able to stabilize the entire Xianyuan Empire and prevent any external enemies from invading. On the other side, Fengjiu arranged his subordinates into several groups and split up. They did not stop at the Phoenix dynasty, but went to their other base, the valley whereby Xiao and the others had gathered. She planned to settle her parents and the Phoenix guards there. On the one hand, it would allow them to improve their strength, and on the other hand, it would be safer there. Master, Luo Yu and the others have arrived at the valley first. Du Fan walked up and said to Fengjiu. There were fewer people in their group. Other than Feng Xiao and his wife, there were only their masters Fengjiu and Guan Shilin, as well as Leng Hua and Leng Shuang. In the carriage, Fengjiu poked his head out to look at the sky and said, "It's getting late. Let's find a place nearby to rest tonight. We should arrive tomorrow after a day's journey." Yes. Du Fan responded and said a few words to Leng Hua. The two of them found a place for them to stop and rest. The group of people sat around a fire by the road. Du Fan and the others went to find game to roast. Seeing that her father was silent all the way, Fengjiu asked, "Father, are you reluctant to leave our home?" Feng Xiao sighed and said, "I was born and raised in this place, but now I have to abandon my hometown and my family has been destroyed. How can everything that I have experienced during this period of time be alleviated in such a short time? It would be a lie to say that I don't feel reluctant or sad." Shangguan Wanrong patted his hand and said, "Don't think too much. Home is where your family is. Moreover, it's not like we won't go back there. If there's a chance in the future, we can still go back, right?" "I know." Feng Xiao nodded and said firmly, "In the future, our family will definitely go back." Seeing this, Fengjiu, he cut a piece of his mother's hand and said, "Father, eat some." As she spoke, she cut another piece and gave it to her mother. "Have a good rest after eating. You'll arrive tomorrow after another day's journey." "Okay." The two of them answered as they tore into the barbecued meat. Fengjiu and Guan Shilin walked around after eating. Looking at Fengjiu beside him, Guan Shilin asked, "Xiao Jiu, do you want to go into seclusion to cultivate when we arrive at the valley?" "Yes. I'm preparing to advance to the fairy realm. I'll go out after my strength and cultivation have stabilized." Chapter 1691. She paused for a moment, then said, "I don't want to see the people around me die again. I hope that they can live well." Hearing this, Guan Shilin said, "Don't worry. I'll help you. I can help you train them and increase their strength again." He was a Xian martial artist, and his current strength and cultivation were already at the top of the Xian martial artists. In addition, he had mastered quite a few martial arts techniques and killing moves. Training the Phoenix guards shouldn't be difficult for him. Fengjiu nodded, then said, Then when we reach the valley, I'll leave the Phoenix guards and the others to you. As for the problem of pills, don't worry. I'll provide you with enough pills so that everyone can advance in the shortest time possible." The group rested there for the night. When the sun rose the next day, they continued their journey towards their destination. "Master, Madam, Master!" Luo Yu and the others, who had arrived at the valley earlier than them, greeted them halfway. When they saw them, they cupped their hands and bowed, saying, "Everything in the valley has been arranged. Master, Madam, please come in and rest." Father, mother, go in and rest first, Feng Jiu said, instructing Leng Hua and Leng Shuang to take care of her parents. What about you? Aren't you going to rest first? Don't tell me you still have things to do? Feng Xiao looked at Feng Jiu and asked. She had been vigilant the entire time, protecting them, afraid that someone in the dark would target them. He knew that she hadn't rested well either. Du Fan and I will go strengthen the surrounding formations and barriers. Feng Jiu smiled, saying, It's okay. I'm not tired. I'll go back after I've rearranged them. You guys going first? All right then. Feng Xiao nodded, saying, If you're too tired, it won't be too late to do it tomorrow. I know. She looked at her mother, saying, Mother, go in with father first. Shangguan Wanrong revealed a faint smile. I know, you also don't need to be busy for too long. After her voice fell, she walked inside with Feng Xiao. Seeing them enter, she made arrangements for Luo Yu and the others, then said to Du Fan, Come with me. Yes, Du Fan replied and followed behind her. On this day, the Feng Wei and the others, as well as Feng Xiao and the others, were all present. Even though they had experienced so many things, the Feng Wei was still in an orderly formation with a piercingly cold aura. It was already evening by the time they finished setting up the surrounding formations and barriers. Feng Jiu didn't go to rest. Instead, he brought Du Fan to the forest in the valley. As early as half an incense stick's time ago, Luo Yu and the others had received Feng Jiu's order to wait here. Therefore, when Feng Jiu walked over, all the Phoenix Guards were already standing there. Greetings, Master. Everyone knelt on one knee and saluted. Feng Jiu stood in front of them and looked at the Feng Wei kneeling on one knee in front of him. He didn't know what to feel. There were so many people in the Feng family, but now there were only 88 people left. It could be said that none of the Feng Wei in the imperial palace had survived. And those who could survive were the people who were guarding the Feng family at that time, as well as some Feng Wei who were scattered outside to gather information. Chapter 1692. Yes! Sonorous and powerful voices rang out in unison. These days, their companions had died, their friends had died, but they had survived. Every time they thought of the helplessness they felt when they couldn't save them, they hated their own incompetence. Only strength could protect the people they wanted to protect. There was never a moment when they didn't want to become stronger. It would be difficult for them to do it on their own. However, if they had the help of their master, they believed that they could do it. Get up, she said, and after everyone stood up, she continued, I will provide you with the advancement pills, and my brother will train you during this time. I hope to see each and every one of you improve by leaps and bounds. She looked at them and said a few words to Guan Shilin, then turned and left, leaving the people behind her to him. In the next few days, Feng Jiu used all the spiritual herbs in her space to refine the advancement pills. After refining a batch of pills, she saw that there were fewer herbs in her space. She wanted to let Du Fan and the others go out, but in the end, she decided to go into the city herself. Just as she was about to tell her parents and prepare to go out, she met Guan Shilin waiting for her outside the courtyard. Brother, what's the matter? I heard that you're going out? Guan Shilin looked at her and asked. Yes, I'm going to the city to buy some spiritual herbs. Why? Do you have something you want to buy? I'll buy it on the way back. Feng Jiu said, What do I have to buy? I'm just worried that it's not safe for you to go out alone. How about this? I'll go with you. Hearing this, Feng Jiu smiled and waved her hand. No need. I'm going to dress up as a little beggar and enter the city. She flicked the red clothes on her body and said, I can't wear this dazzling outfit. The news must have spread. There might be many people watching in the dark. It's the safest and most convenient way for me to dress up as a little beggar and enter the city. But you can't do it yourself. He said, How about this? Since you want to dress up as a beggar, I'll dress up as a beggar and go to the city with you. You? She looked at him in surprise, then laughed and waved her hand. No, you're not cut out for that. What do you mean by that? If you can do it, why can't I? Guan Shilin said disapprovingly. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw her slap his chest. Look at you, your muscles are firm, and you're tall and strong. You don't look like a beggar at all. All right, that's it. I won't talk to you anymore. I have to go back and prepare before entering the city." Fengjiu smiled and turned to leave, preparing to return to his room to change his clothes. Hearing her words, Guan Shilin couldn't help but lower his head and look at his muscular body. He frowned and said, "That's true.